don't know how many of you have attended these events before, but we have a person who kind of hosts, and today it's Dan Bolland. Dan's a chartered accountant. He started his career out in the corporate world with the likes of KPMG, Barclays, Lloyds, and then made the move to startups. So he's going to share some insight today on what it takes really to make that transition, things to think about, and just share his own story. We do want the session to be interactive as always, so please feel free to jump in with any questions throughout the duration of the presentation, and then we'll have an open discussion at the end. The only slight challenge I've got is that I can't see anybody because I'm doing this on an iPad, so if I don't see that you've raised your hands, it might just be a case of people just speaking up so that we get people to interact. So with that, I'll hand over to Dan.
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, and noting you're on the iPad there, I don't know, Christiane, or you can keep an eye on chat, because sometimes people might just want to write some questions in there, and you can jump in at a reasonable time and just say.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll say, yeah.
Obviously, we're in the paperless world. I was told would exist back in the late 1990s when I started working, and therefore I've written everything in a kind of soft copy on my background, but I've now realised I've got a presentation in front of me, and I've got my notes on another screen, and I've got Zoom on the other screen with chat. So I'm going to big myself up here during this, but I don't think I'll get to the point of being able to juggle three things at once. It's probably a little bit too far. So do just jump in. Yeah, please do. If you've got questions, jump in. I mean, there's not a huge amount of content on these slides. Most of it's going to be oral. And then you can call questions, and then I put a gap at the end, obviously, so we can fire some questions in there and freestyle jams if we want to do about other topics or areas I've missed or whatever that wants to be. So okay, well, I mean, Chris did a somewhat better description of my early career than I did, right, in super fast form, I would say. Just realising now my notes on the background, so I'm not got a white screen for me. Yeah, I mean, left uni, became a computer programmer, BBA. It's like late 90s, early 90s. And all that taught me was I didn't want to be a coder, I wanted to be an accountant. I'm not quite sure why it led that to that, but there we go. So then off the number of jobs, payables, receivables, MI, all that kind of fun, mainly automating them through VBA while I was qualifying through VPP, then taught for VPP for a little while, ended up in banking. Then there was this big crisis in 2008, just as I arrived. And I knew ways of doing it, and then it kind of went Barclays, Northern Rock, KPMG, Barclays, KPMG again, and then eventually started doing some consultancy for small startup businesses. Generally, they go something like step one: invent, discover, come up with, design, develop something very clever. Step three: we're millionaires, down. Step two: I don't know what step two is. We've done the clever thing, Dan. Now, where's the million, right? And a whole bunch of that is we need to speak to investors, we need to go to clients, we need to have marketing, we need to have product. And we don't know that because we're like a startup and we've come up with something clever, like equivalent finance or AI, my first business was, or in tech and marketing, that's my more recent one is with CUB. And I don't want to say all of that lands on the CFO's desk, but as early senior person, and we'll come on to this in more detail and some anecdotes, no doubt, that you're almost a grown-up in the room. Now, I'm saying this, and I haven't really checked who's on here now. There might be friends and family, some other people who've worked with me. And look, I'll say right at the outset, he says, from just inside of his cheek. A lot of the anecdotes I'm going to tell here may well be in first person, but of course, they've never been in any of the businesses I've ever been involved in. But I've heard of friends that have been involved in those things, and I merely put them into first person just for the sake of humour and ease of delivery. Okay, so just in case there's any investors on with any of the business I'm involved in, definitely none of these things have ever happened with my businesses, but I've heard of them happen, so you know that they do exist. So look, there'll be a bunch, I sense, if not most here who are on this call, who were like me. I nearly said 10 years ago. If there's only 3, it feels at least 10 since I moved out of the easy world of high walls, posh lifts, lovely canteens, and those of office rooms and pensions and all of those exciting things into the world of startups and trying to find a breakout area or a massive room like this one in order to do a presentation in. It must be all of 6 square foot here. I'm not a very big man, but still there's not a lot of leg room here. And a lot of working on a laptop while on the train and moving around. So there I was at the precipice. And look, it's easy to, we are by our very nature as finance people overthinkers, right? We like the questions, we like a sense of skepticism or pessimism, let's say, and challenge around what we're going to do. If we don't, we've probably chosen the wrong profession, right? Could have got a job, Chris and Christian, you can close your ears here. Could have got a job in recruitment or marketing, right? And spent our career licking stamps, but we didn't, right? So we are overthinkers almost certainly by nature. And, therefore there's lots of questions we ask ourselves, right? And what are those going to be? So I now need to move on to the next slide, right? So lots of questions, right? We're going to ask ourselves all these questions. We need to come back at the end, right? You can ask whatever you want, right? And indeed, you might want to in some future stage. I was hoping I wasn't going to be 300 people here when I put this promise out. You can, if you want to, DM me, right? If something needs to in the future. But, how do we deal with all these things? I remember my wife asking me, must have been 6-9 months into it. She said, you seem to be working never more, Dan, right? A lot more hours, a lot of having to do stuff on the weekend, right? With some flexibility, right? I tried to get a dog walk in a day. But we seem to have less money than we've ever had. And I then obviously had to explain to my wife what paper value meant and the fact that, the business had just been valued at 30 odd million and, I got 5% of that. So, that's 1.5 million. And she said, oh, brilliant. Well, in that case, can we go to Dubai for Easter holidays? And I said, absolutely not. You have not understood any of this paper value. I don't have any of this money. I'm currently earning less than half I used to, right? And I think that kind of bimodal distribution of psyche is difficult to deal with. On the one hand, you're like, this thing's been brilliant. If it goes off and these illiquid things called shares turn into anything that looks like cash, it's going to be the best move I've ever made, and there's lots of money in it. And yet, on the other hand, thinking, we're going to need to push the mortgage out a little bit because cash flow's tough at the moment, right? Like, that is the world of early start. It's worth saying, I'm going to talk about startups here in a tone really at the less than 10 or 15 people. One, because they're where my best anecdotes are. Two, it's where I've spent a fair bit of time in startups. But also, it's the most different from large corporates, right? You can obviously start to scale up as you start to get 50 or 100 people in a startup. It's still a startup. You're going to start to get more of the things that you would in a corporate world. You're going to get more of your pay certain and less of your pay based on stock. So I'll use that not because it's the only type of startup you can move to, or if you're considering or looking at a job somewhere I don't know, north of Series C or D. It's going to be very different than the kind of pre-seed Series A I'm doing here. I'm really, in some sense, doing that just so we can see what the other end of the seesaw looks like. But again, we can take questions if we need to on those. So, without further ado, what is it like? I mean, I was trying to come up with slightly tweet titles, which I think I've done, right? But hopefully they have some memorable landing left in the phrases. I think the biggest challenge for me, especially coming from, look, and I do also accept here, my move to startups wasn't from near startups or medium, right? But coming from Barclays and KPMG down into startup world, I mean, first of all, wow, what a shock, right? Whatever I say, whatever others have said, it is definitely a shock. There are, in so many ways, things that felt like absolute certainties, like there are priors you will have that will just disappear, right? And I don't need to say all of them are bad or all of them are good. I think a lot of them weigh heavy on finance, especially if you're ending up coming in a kind of one-man team or woman team of finance. It can be difficult, right? And we'll touch on some of those later when it comes to governance. But, just from a raw, we've got a finance person in now, so they will do. Just whatever ends in that sentence, whatever that might be, is going to be an online bank statement and an Excel spreadsheet. Like, this isn't going to be, we've got, I'll just go into Oracle, I'll post a journal, I'll run a trial balance like that. No, this is far closer to, I've just qualified for my technical accounting exam from BPP, right? So I'm just ACCA qualified or ACA qualified, and I can do a balance sheet, right? It's going to be like that, right? And it's going to be pulling it together. So don't jump in if you're not all right with doing that. This isn't, ask team of 16 and financial control can pull together the trial balance and let's see where we're up to, or where are we up to on stock. Any of that analysis, stock a day, any of those, that's on you. That's on a spreadsheet as well. Both of the companies I work for at the moment are on these sheets, right? But which brings its own annoyance. But that's nothing to do with being a startup, right? That's just an old man used to Excel and getting annoyed that the decimal place arrow goes a different way. You're going to have to do all of this yourself, right? This is bats and balls, right? You can't invent the game and you can't play it on your own. It can't be done, right? So really, what is that going to look like? What's it going to do? And we'll come on a little bit in terms of reporting. Also, my experience is almost no one asks you them. So, yeah, look, obviously, US filing, that's going to happen if you're in the US and you've got UK filing, you've got both of those, then you need to juggle those. And of course, there'll almost certainly be an external accountant. But nobody's saying, like, where are we up to, what's that, other than an interval, where are we up to on revenue or where are we up to on burn rate, right? Like, profitability is going to go out the window early on. Everything, burn rate, what is burn rate, how much do we spend a month, ideally on average, if not this month, and divide that into how much money we've got left in the bank. Right? And then people are just going to say, like, when are we going to run out of money, how are we going? And the obvious way to protect that, right, what's good for instinct for the finance folks, it's, can we spend less? Can I not approve that? Can I delay that a month, right? And then suddenly, coming on to some of my other stuff, if I come into now, you're somehow meant to feel like some kind of emotional handbrake to the kind of fun party that is, we're in a startup, we've been given money, we need to spend the money. And yet, you as the responsible person for when are we going to run out of money, we need 12 months, we need 18 months, if you're lucky enough, 24. And clearly the only way to get them is to spend less money. I mean, the maths aren't very difficult, albeit the emotions definitely are. And on occasion, you spend more of your time doing the finance stuff, needing a chaise longue and being the counsellor than you are being a mathematician, right? Like, the numbers aren't hard here, these things aren't complex, but a lot more people are exposed to those finances than would be in a company of 1,000 people, right? Or God knows a bar, where everybody just needs to know in their own little arena in terms of what they need to do. Perfect segue, almost like I did do some notes, into kind of the silos. Now, in some sense, obviously, you go, well, of course, damn, silos must be smaller when there's 10 people. You can't have a silo of one person, albeit we do our best in finance. But to me, this goes a little bit wider than that in terms of what that could be, because, look, I look back at my time when I was at Group Finance in Barclays. Finance was about 7 different silos. The FinCon folks didn't speak to the technical accountants, but they did a little bit. Technical accountants never spoke to the MI plan, and none of those spoke to the revenue modelers. So there are some, but I'm talking way bigger than that, right? Macro outside of finance. There probably won't be anyone who looks at these. And you're going to be sitting there with some letters after your name, sitting in a CFO chair and saying boring things like, no, there really are rules for revenue. That is not a number you can just make up, right? I mean, I can get a little bit looser on sales, but they're definitely, and you're going to be saying things like, there are rules. Well, before you know it, you're going to be in charge of all legal matters as well, right? Because who else would you trust, right? And then they're like, oh no, those people do care about what the rules are. And the next thing you know, you're spending an evening writing down terms and conditions and dealing with the external counsel. It's not just there are silos inside of finance, and it's not just that people on it. You're going to be asked to stretch across there because there just aren't people with that muscle memory. And like it or not, as finance folks, we're pretty good at following, I was about to say rules then, laws, principles, whatever you want to describe. And again, for those who join later, I'm using first person here in some of these anecdotes. Of course, none of these things have happened at any of the businesses I've been in. I've heard them from other people, so I know they do happen. I'm merely using first person here for effect. But you're going to be asked to deal with all kinds of issues whether they are HR, we tried to fire someone. What do you mean by fire someone? Well, kind of swore at him and kicked him out of the building. Right, did we get anything in email? What we did? You're going to end up getting pulled into an act because there won't be a head of HR, and you'll then get pulled into legal over some other issue. And, you know, that doesn't obviously fit with finance, but it might not fit with anyone else. Right? Like if it's a technology startup and there's 12 people, 9 of those people are going to work in technology. Right? And one of the others is probably a CEO who thinks they work in technology, but if you speak to the tech team, they'll say, I don't know what I'm talking about. You know, a lot of, I'm going to sound like I'm from Barclays here, but like a lot of middle and back office operations are just going to end up with you, a quiet evening, 2 cups of coffee, both of which have gone cold, half a sandwich, an Excel spreadsheet, and a bunch of emails that don't seem to make any sense unless read in concurrent with a bunch of slackness. Right? I mean, again, I stress this is when you're down at 10 people rather than 200, but how far I got stretched, I should say, these other folks I've spoken to got stretched into areas that were a bit uncomfortable. It should not be underestimated. I mean, non-trivial would be the lightest end of that phrase in terms of talking it through. Right? So I just think trying to get your head around that is a big leap. Right? Sometimes people go, oh, I've got it down and I could do my own accounts and I could do a balance sheet and I'll do my cash flow management and I'll be on top of it. And I'll enjoy that actually, because I hear you here. There's a sense that I know all of the numbers and I've made them all and I don't need to trust other people because I've done them and it rests to 0 and I can go to bed happy. But then you are also going to get stretched into a whole load of different things, and sometimes I can't know for certain what they be because it's a kind of beta to whatever the other folks are in your business and their skills and desires and what they want to get into. But the chances are HR, not HR like hiring, people like doing nice stuff, HR like firing, getting rid of people, dealing with issues, often in different countries and different tax regimes, and they may or may not, again, these are stories I've heard, even register people with the local tax authorities, and then you have to tell people, no, they're getting fired, that'll be a big tax bill because nobody can pay it. And people try and stand like, oh, well, I didn't know you have to pay tax. Right? I mean, like all kinds of things I've heard happen. Again, none of those are the businesses I've been involved in, because they're all brilliant. So yeah, I mean, you get ready to get stretched all over the place, right? Like officially CFO, but it's really like there's a lot of parenting that I think isn't implicit and certainly isn't written down on job descriptions. But you know, you're someone who can follow rules and you're someone who's trusted, and some of that will come from the board as well. Right? You know, on the board, presumably at this stage, or albeit if not soon to come, you know, there'll be an investor or investor rep on behalf of other investors. And then investors will have their own, can we have numbers? And they'll probably just completely miss out the CEO, come to you and say, can we have these numbers? And yet you are not always in all the conversations with the CEO. Again, never happened with me, but with other businesses. And the CEO is just spouting out numbers like they have no concern. And you've got to try and reconcile them into some kind of deck. And that can lead to some tension again, I've heard. So look, I suppose I've been doing lots of negativity, and I don't mean it to be, right? It's super exciting. You do get involved in all kinds of things, and you add all kinds of skills you never knew you needed to build around dealing with a bunch of those things, right? You know, who knew? I knew the firing practices in New Zealand or Canada, right? Turns out I do. And indeed, I say Canada specifically in Quebec, my friends have this issue with, and they have their own rules outside of Canada. Who knew that? So I don't want to put all this down. You know, the other thing that people always say, and they say this is the reason why they have to go and do it. Like Dan, I've got to go and get into somewhere small. It's weird saying I had lots of bosses when I was working at the big places and told me I should go and be somewhere small. But sometimes there are all the words in there, a little fruity for this call. But you know, the impression is I'm constrained, Dan. It's, you know, I'm here at Barclays anywhere. I'm like a large corporation, and I'm hamstrung. I'm being held back. I could do more. These walls are getting in the way. I mean, I'm not saying, you know, people in finance are like, oh, if only I didn't have to follow ISB, well, we could do all kinds. What I mean really is just in your career, getting involved in stuff, growing into different areas. You know, the constraints of those silos of the large businesses can feel on occasion that they stop moving, right? And in some sense they do it by design. And that is often when you speak to someone, why would you want to do this? Look, and I look back and reflect on myself here. Because there's lower constraints, because I could be a bit more of a master of own destiny, to get involved in those things. And look, I don't want to take those things away. The only thing I would say on reflection, and this isn't to imply full regret, but it is definitely true that walls have a warming purpose, right? So when good times are good, like I don't want to turn into Bing Crosby here, but give me land, lots of land, and the starry skies above, right? Don't fence me in. That was obviously a desire, right? It's almost innate in us all. When the sun's shining, when it's good times, I just want to get out there. But when the rain, I'm going to push this metaphor as far as it'll go, probably even further. But when the rain and the wind are coming at you, like walls do provide shelter. When the bad times come, right, and you're the only person who apparently read any of the emails, right, that went around, you do sometimes wonder, where are the walls? Where are the other people? Why is this inside my world? Why isn't this not? Why is it? I'd like a fence to say this is outside of my arena, right? When you take the fences up and say master of own destiny and all that, the fences are up, right? There is just lack of certainty in lots of areas, and there are occasions when you're like, if you had a little wall here to lean on, right? And so I don't want to post that kind of that freedom as all good, especially if you're going to end up as almost naturally will do, making guesses here on where people are at with their careers. You're going to be the most senior person in finance, and that probably means the most senior person who cares about governance and things, and therefore it's going to be kind of implied your responsibility, but without that dedicated reach. And what does that look like? So I'm not anti-freedom, but I'm also not anti-war, right? And I probably didn't realize the benefit of those until I left and went to somewhere so small. Right now, admittedly, I made quite a leap there, didn't I, from the 39th floor of Barclays down to small business with 8 people. But it is dissonant, right? Like there's a touch of the bends there as you're trying to get your head around. But sorry, are you telling me that nobody, and the answer is, yeah, I don't even know what the question is. So again, one of these things that happened first before I heard about. So yeah, I just wanted to just give a sense there of what that feels like, of all of those constraints going on, because you can't just take a little bit of them or have lower walls, right? I mean, I suppose you can go somewhere in between, right, center side. But certainly in my journey, they were kind of ripped up or knocked down, would be a better phrase. It depends if you're talking about a fence or a wall, I suppose. That was pretty mind-blowing, right? Like it wobbled me around quite a lot. And then I was trying to think, first of all, what an image to finish on, right? All of my others were quite professional and looked good, and now I've just got some people playing Jenga, and most of the Jenga blocks are upside down. Is that the finance person in me, or just general OTD? When they were taking a photo of this, why they didn't rebuild it with all of the Jenga words aiming up, it just annoys me. It wouldn't have taken that long, but anyway, doesn't matter. Why? As others around me would say, it matters to me, but there we go. I touch on governance because I think it's the one thing that I think about the most as the biggest difference, in that there's just a broad expectation that if something's gone wrong and something therefore affects the numbers, that it was probably the CFOs to fix, right? And I'd always rather prevent rather than fix, but it's hard to prevent when it's not a legitimate control. Like, it's not like you have control over all the business. There's only 10 people here, right? But you're slowly trying to say, guys, if we're ever going to do that, it all needs to be in this channel. Like silly things like, we either talk about all of these things on Slack or all of these things on email. Please don't WhatsApp them, but also don't just jump between different mediums. Somebody's got to control this when they look back on this as to what's happening. And maybe, look, if it's a request for spend, it's always in one channel, or it's always email, and then I can do a folder in my email and always put them there. And you feel a little bit like the parent, like running around the kids in the kitchen, taking knives off them. No, you're not allowed to play with knives. And it's funny because when you're in there early on, and certainly the first one I went in like super pumped energy. Everyone's going to do this. Like, we're going to make it together. Yeah. We all believe in each other. We're all great. Let's go. And within 3 months, you start feeling like their dad, saying, no, look, you can't, no, please stop doing it like that. This is what, and you're like putting little walls in a little bit, and they're like, and that is a funny tone, and you do end up feeling a little bit like, not like you're not in the cool gang, but you're not in the cool gang. Like, maybe it's me, maybe there is a way to dance that, but I've certainly not found that. And that was funny for me, because I was very much the other person in Barclays, right, in KPMG. I was the person saying, no, we've got to do less of this type of stuff, and it's holding us back. But I really have found myself feeling like a parent of teenagers, right, on occasion. Again, not in everything they do, but just in the way that there are a bunch of things that just work a lot better and create less future regrets. Just do them in the right way. And if you do them in the right way, it shouldn't take any longer, and it should all be fine. And that change of tone of feeling like your peers' parents it's strange. But, you know, I get annoyed when I have to do it with my teenage children. Never mind when I have to do it with 30 and 40-year-old adults. So that one's funny for me. I've never really solved that. If anyone wants to DM me with the actual answer to that, it would be great. It just feels like I have all the responsibility for a load of things. If they go wrong, if they go right, clearly it wasn't me. But actually, you don't get to see how those things work. And again, it all just comes back to everything gets solved with an email channel, Slack open, bank statements online, and an Excel spreadsheet, and an email to an external legal counsel. Right? It's like it's the bottom of the bagatelle machine. If the ball's gone wrong, it doesn't matter where it started. All this needs to end up in CFO's bucket. Again, these are generalizations, right? You might get a CEO who's the head of compliance somewhere, right? But yeah, I mean, I just think those are really kind of my headlines as I've gone through these things and what it's felt like. I mean, at our highest level, right? I did start off with this, and this chat was about 4 hours long, so I decided it was too long, so I shortened it. So we've missed some of the anecdotes there of people I know, right? Not of me. So, Chris, maybe your mute hasn't working, or Christian, yours hasn't either, right? Or maybe I just spoke so eloquently that there are no questions, right? It's so obvious, right? Or maybe I've just had 2 coffees and I wasn't willing to listen, and I just need to stop now if there's nothing else to brew. But yeah, it's I'll invite you to questions.
If anyone has questions, I was going to say, you can drop them in the chat box, and I'll go through them with Christine being on her iPad and struggling to access it. Has anybody got anything they want to ask?
Or even just if anyone's got any of their own experiences that they want to share.
I've got one if we're just allowed to speak up. Is that okay?
Sure. Yeah, definitely.
Hi, I'm Caroline. So yeah, similar to you, I started so Big 4 training, and I've worked in a lot of big corporates, and since having my kids, I've taken more roles in smaller companies, and I'm getting to the point now where I'm actually between jobs, and I'm looking at different opportunities. And one of them that's come up is a startup. It's sort of slightly bigger than what you're looking at, but some really good opportunities. And it's been really refreshing to hear what you've got to say, actually hear what it's really like. But I guess I feel like I've got a lot of knowledge over my career, and but in terms of how to, if I was to start in one of these, yeah, I've got a lot of knowledge and I've got a reasonable amount of common sense. But have you found any particular resources or networks really useful to sort of guide you? Because I guess when you're stuck in it and you go from doing a CFO role where you got lots of support and people doing all these different things to actually being the only one, I imagine it's quite easy to sort of miss things because you're so busy with so many other things. Is there any kind of, you found any useful networks or resources and checklists and things to just
there are a bunch of tools out there that I didn't jump into, right? I mean, I'm not sponsored by them, but the zeros of the world are good, right? But they are only tools, right? So they're only going to be as good as you set them up. So if you can, again, depends who you work with here, right? But as some of them have grown, getting Zero hooked up with HubSpot so they could automatically update if something happened on the sales side half the time at a quarter end or an investor's had it after something, you ask someone for sales and they go, "Oh, we've got all these." And they go, "Where are these? How are we not built them? What is going on?" Right. So just the more you can auto light systems that people can use on their mobile, they've definitely been better. I tried with external accountants to do DMI and cash recs and that kind of thing. I'm not sure how much time it's ever saved me. Just because I then have a query, and then by the time I've got to the query, I put the kids to bed, or I mean, they're teenagers now, so they don't speak to me. But I've got to it at 9 p.m. Well, the accountant support, right, who's junior and in Cambridge somewhere, isn't available now. So they're like, right, well, I'll just sort out that. And you think, well, I could have just done the whole bloody report by now. So I don't think I've found a perfect sweet spot on that. I mean, managing the business has been easier. Setting reminders on when things need to be done, like you'll get a rhythm, right? So I know a bunch of investors always ask, like you ask them now, do you need anything? No. Will you need anything next month? No. But I know in 2 weeks, someone will say in there, we need to send our quarterly report, and I'll send me a quarterly report. I know that's coming and I've got the numbers ready because I know that's good. Like finding those quiet times and just going right to left. Like, what have I got? When will I need that? How's that going to come across? Those little things have helped. I haven't found any silver. I'd love to hear someone on this call, any silver bullets on solutions in that sense, other than just when you've got the quiet time, try and sow some seeds for the future, because a lot of it does cry in our look. If you've got a team or 2 or 3, that starts getting easier, doesn't it? Because you can train people up on doing those things. And I think I would spin that, instead of having recently hired someone, as I'm going to teach you all of the skills of all of the CFO, right? Which you wouldn't get if you went to Barclays, because you just really, really get good at financial control, right? But get ready to do some mundane Excel work.
So no sort of networks or anything you found particularly?
Networks, yeah, lots of leaning on people. I don't know if they're formalised networks, but mine, I've got about 5 or 6 people I bounce off all the time, and I'd hope they would say they do off me. I mean, if we're doing shout out, Corin's my absolute favourite. But show me out yesterday. But yeah, like with look, guys, if anyone got a template for this kind of thing, and someone will say yes, I have, and then you'll get 2 or 3 and they'll go wrong. But it gives you a start sometimes. You look back on, they sent me that, I built this, but at least it's easier to start from not a blank piece of paper. Yeah, I mean, definitely lean on other folks who have been there, right? Because if nothing else, we've all felt the pain and we know how bad it is. And you're like, I've got 24 hours to do this round, and I don't know where to start. Yeah.
Okay.
Caroline, are you a member of the Guild group, the FD and CFO network?
The Guild group? No, I'm not.
We host a group called the FD and CFO network. There's just short of 1,000 members across the UK, and that was kind of born up for that very reason, where FD and SMEs are often booked with them, and to basically a network you can ask questions, get information, and it's really, really useful. When we finish the call, send an email, there'll be a link so you can join.
Okay. All right, that's great. Thank you.
That wasn't that clear, Chris, but I think we got the gist of it.
I'll send out an email with a link, Caroline. It'll come through Eventbrite, so if you just keep a lookout, just in case it goes to junk, but the group's on that email, so you'll be able to click
send it to us all.
It will go to everybody. It'll go to everybody.
That's great. Thank you.
Angela? You're on mute, Angela. It looks good, though. The question looks good.
Damn it. So I've just come out of 25 plus years in a corporate in the corporate world, and after decompressing, am looking into interim work and fractional FD work. And what I'm seeing a lot of is in these interim jobs is you must have PE experience, and I'm kind of wondering why that's so important, because I think in some of the work that I've done, it's transferable, i.e. you've got multiple shareholders with different priorities, and also I come from, it's WPP, which is a very high demanding reporting environment. So I'm wondering, is there something else that I'm not aware of in the PE sort of requirement?
The only the only thing I could think of on the PE side, so first of all, like I agree, right, there's lots of that out there, and you didn't touch much on fractional, right? But the big headache with fractional is you kind of work out in your head, I've got a 6 there, and 4 here, and 30% there, and I think that all adds up to 1. And then all of them ask in urgent demands on your time, all on Friday afternoon, right? So you don't control the wave. So if you're going to do it, put buffer in, because you just get constructive interference, and it's almost like someone's behind the screens with the dials going, this will get him, this will get Dan now, right? Let's fire all 3 of these emails out at the same time. So I know that wasn't a question. Yeah, so on the PE side, I think the only other thing there would be the manner in which PE look at their kind of investment engagements. It is very different, right? So it's not like we need to prepare a quarterly balance sheet, P&L, running cash flow, but like it's a lot more, what's the free cash flow? Where's it coming in? What are our debtor days? Where's the leverage at? If we add more debt here, where could we get it through? Like and a transaction isn't quite the right phrase. I'm not sure what the word is. I sense there is one and I just don't know it. With just, they look at everything like if they're like an in-flight NPV. So it's just a very, it's like looking down the other end of the telescope. All the numbers are there, you understand, but it's just, that's their manner of doing it. And if you present it with a P&L, they're just like, is this an outcome? Is this a plan? Because they really only really looking at their P&Ls when they're saying, we can get here, this is what it looked like. Everything's much more like it's just you're in a deal, right? So it's almost a framing of how you give people the numbers less than it is, I don't know those nouns or verbs. It's more just, I'm just looking to hit different numbers. And the other thing I would say is, like, everything is for sale all the time. So you're only ever an hour away from, this is a transaction, we're going to try and conclude it over the weekend, we might want to sell, and you end up running around like an accountant with not enough spreadsheet. Right? Yeah, I mean, it's not I suppose it's just a different tone, right? And you just have to be thick-skinned to it. And of course it is. And then there's no transaction goes through, and then there's nothing needed for 6 months. So I think it's just a bit different, right? So my guess is good quality candidates will probably still get through. It's just, it's difficult. 12 months ago, there was definitely a short, I mean, if the recruiters can talk to this, it felt like there was a shortage of people and not enough roles. Shortage of people and plenty of roles. I don't know, it feels to me on the fractional side to have a little bit of spare capacity that, God knows what I do with it, sleep or relax or do something readable. Watch Succession maybe. It feels like that's tipping. I mean, I'll leave that to recruiters to talk about, but it does feel like there's more of us around at the moment and less jobs, but maybe that's just temporal. I don't know.
Yeah, I've heard similar, so I think that's really helpful. Thank you for that.
No problem.
I'm scared to speak in case you can't hear me. Is it not very clear when I speak?
You're absolutely crystal clear now, Chris. But last time when you were telling us stuff we wanted to know,
Sorry. I was just going to say, I think you're right. I think about 12 months ago, there was definitely a shortage of candidates and a lot more opportunity, but I think it started to balance out. I don't know whether, businesses became aware that there was a shortage of candidates, so they've perhaps made other arrangements, but I think it's leveled out a little bit, but there's still a lot of sort of 2-day-a-week stuff out there. So yeah, it's just when you're doing that, it's kind of like 2 jobs, isn't it? You've got the business development end of it, networking to build up your client portfolio, and then you've got the delivery. So I think it's just a very busy, and getting that balance right of capacity to take on new clients. So, but good luck with it, Angela. I don't know if anyone else has got anything they want to share based on Dan's presentation, or are we conscious of the time? I don't know whether we're...
You put that at the end there, Chris, based on Dan's presentation, in case you just like, does anyone want to share anything? I'm like, well, I've been having this for lunch today.
It was really informative, Dan. Thank you. I really appreciate you taking the time out to prepare and present.
I mean, clearly not a lot of time to prepare there. I just pulled the string in my back and we saw what happened.
I was a bit concerned when I spoke to you on Monday and you were like, oh yeah, good. But by the time I started preparing, like, yeah, it's on Wednesday.
I mean, do feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn as well, right, if anyone needs to, I mean,
Perfect.
People have got email.
Brilliant. Well, unless anyone's got anything they want to add, I guess we're kind of bang on time. I guess just from our point of view, we will send a link for the FDs and CFO network. We've got obviously 3 brands, HR Recruit, Accountancy Recruit and FD Recruit. So if any of you need any support, or even just kind of, market intel or anything like that, please don't hesitate to reach out. Just let the blog. But yeah, thank you very much for that.
It went a bit funny then as well, Christine, but we got it, and everything will be in the email as well. So if anyone's got any queries, you'll be receiving some information. So
Okay.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you.